Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? I gotta do a bit of a different video. Now, every once in a while I think to myself, well, maybe I should split up my channel, have several different channels. Because originally I just started talking about tabletop role-playing games, and then I started doing some bass guitar stuff here and there, and sometimes I just talk about another subject. People have asked, why don't you do that? Maybe I will one day, but I've always said this is a channel about me, so right now I'm just gonna talk about what I'm thinking about. There was something I did on Facebook very recently. It was a bit of a social experiment, and it was a social experiment on giving in a minimalist sense, like to the point where it's almost inconsequential for the person. Let's see what happens. And, well, here's the idea. I looked at my Facebook friends list, and there's like about 1,500 people on it, maybe a little bit more. A lot of these people, I forgot who they were. Or maybe there's some duplicate accounts or some people that are no longer with us, and the usual stuff that happens to a list like that, like my subscribers list, all that kind of stuff. And I've got more subscribers than that, so this would work with that as well. And so I posted, here's something interesting. If each one of you were to Venmo me just $5, by the way, my Venmo is Ivan Mike 1968. Can you imagine? If you want to participate in this experiment. If each one of you were to just Venmo me $5, well, that's like, I didn't tell them the number, but it's like $65,000. That would take care of pretty much any kind of financial problem I have, and I have some, for a while, a good long time. And I even pontificated further on this post. Well, gosh, if everybody in America were to Venmo me $1, that's just keeping it to the United States. Well, gosh, that's $340 million. Then I could afford to be quite charitable myself and, take care of whatever I need to take care of, but then give to various charities, whatever, that kind of thing. And, I just said, well, let's see who donates what, just as an experiment. I got exactly one donation, and it was for $1, and it was from one of the people that was least able to contribute any money to anybody, and they were even apologetic about it. And said, gosh, I wish I could have given you $5. And I said, no problem, don't worry about it. Thought that was really, really interesting. And in fact, the overall response to it was rather negative. People weren't really nasty, but they did kind of poke some fun and say a few things that weren't necessarily nice. And of course, I know how the Facebook algorithm works. Only a certain amount of people are going to see this. So it's not really a completely bulletproof experiment, but I just want to see what would happen with that. Now, I've had the experience of being the recipient of incredibly generous charity. When, I don't know if you remember, some of you have been with the channel for a longer time. In 2020, when my girlfriend at the time, Megan, was ill with lung cancer and, passed away later that year, we had some fundraisers and the people were incredibly generous. I was able to stay home for 6 months and still had money left over to stay home for a couple months until I was able to, handle all the affairs and get another job and then kind of move on with life. And I've done that. But people were incredibly generous. Even some people from my YouTube audience gave money. And I think you could probably find a video for that. And this was something where, there was there was a need that people could see that, they couldn't do anything about, that was fairly dire. And so they did what they could. And I'm very, very thankful for that. But I found it quite interesting in a different format where you're really not asking for that much. $1, $5, one time. How reluctant people are to give. And I thought, I talked to my girlfriend, Susan, who I've been with for 2.5 years now. And we had a very interesting discussion about this. And I started to think about my own life and the times I've been generous and not so generous. And I thought back to years ago in the Stone Age when I was married back in the first time, back in 1990. I sound like Liz Taylor, don't I? I'm my first wife. And at that time, I was going through my evangelical phase, which I actually had, believe it or not, as an atheist, I can say that. But we were going to a church, an evangelical free church, and we were literally tithing 10% of our income. We were giving that to the church, or sometimes I would give it to another organization allied with that. But here's the thing. We were making decent money, really decent money for the time. With our combined income and our expenses, was it, did it have an impact on us? Yes. But it wasn't that hard and we did it after taxes as well, which to some people is cheating. But, we were able to give 10% of our post-tax income, as charity all the time. And didn't really have a huge impact. Now, there were other reasons why we did that at that time, but I remembered that. Other times in my life, I've had, I've made a good amount of money. Not a tremendous amount of money, but a good amount of money. And some of those times, I wasn't as charitable. I didn't necessarily come, face to face with some charities, but I did. I think this, and also pre-internet, you're less likely to bump into charities. Now you can see, charities all the time. I'm not quite certain at that point. There was other things going on in my head and in my life that made me less charitable at that time. But I certainly had the money to do that if I wanted to. And every once in a while, I was somewhat charitable. Later on, when I perhaps became a new man in a lot of ways, I got to the point, actually when I was with Megan, where I could afford to be charitable. I didn't make a tremendous amount of money, but I had some money. And very often it was a little bit here and there, to an organization that I was a part of that was completely self-supporting. And also, a lot of times just to people on the street, the person that just is down on their luck, or, they're going down the wrong path. But, at this point, here's $5. I'll buy a pack of cigarettes, whatever it happened to be. And I was in a position, to do that. Now, at this point in my life, I'm less able to do that. And so it's less likely that I'll be charitable. I should still be charitable to this organization. But even then, it's like $1 or $2 or $5 here and there, that sort of thing. It's inconsequential. Backing up a little bit, and this is really, really interesting to me. I went to Tractor Supply Company to pick up some pellets for my wood stove, and I accidentally hit this button as I was checking out, and I donated $1 to Mutt Nation. And the woman said, "Thank you very much, for your donation." I said, "I donated? Oh, okay." And I almost said for a minute, I didn't mean to donate. But then, I think I even said that. I was like, "Oh, no, that's cool. That's fine." And I thought about it. Well, that $1 somebody gave me, well, now I gave to this other organization. That $1 has no impact on my life whatsoever. There will be zero consequences for me donating that $1 to somebody. And I thought to myself, who can I pick on? What about Elon Musk? Not picking on him, but just looking at incomes, comparing incomes, that sort of thing. So as far as I know, I did the math right based on my income last year and his income last year. If the same thing were to happen to him, it would be $350 million. I think it's $350 million. It's a lot. It's a lot of money. And it wouldn't really have a tremendous impact. Was it $3.5 million? Maybe it's $3.5 million. Doesn't really matter. It's a lot of money. I think it's probably 3.5. Sounds more reasonable. But just wouldn't matter. And you look at sometimes at the charities supported by people at various economic stations and how much charitable giving they do. And, very often, sometimes I'll see a lot of charity being done very publicly and for show into very big, flashy things. And anyhow, I don't want to get this into social commentary, but it's interesting. Talking to my girlfriend a little bit more about this, she mentioned that very often, she has some friends that she's donated to, but sometimes she'll see somebody that's having a fundraiser for something that she hasn't gotten enough up the money to do as well. Like something for her child, and this other person has the same sort of thing with their child. And very often she won't give to that person because she thinks, well, gosh, I still have to do this for my kid. And I can't afford to give to your kid to do the same thing. I thought that was kind of interesting. But if it was something unrelated, and I don't know if there's any evidence on this or support this, is unrelated. If it's unrelated to your circumstances, will you be more likely to give? In other cases, and I've had this happen a lot, when it's more related to the circumstances I've been in prior to, I'm a little bit more likely to give. But I'm not in that situation any longer. So that may have something to do with it. I found this whole thing very, very fascinating. I'd love to see what you guys do. Will you donate me money? My Venmo is Ivan Mike 1968, right? It's got my smiling face on it. Just an inconsequential amount. No big amounts. Now, of course, something like this is not sustainable. It's not going to solve the world's problems, because if we all gave everybody $1 in the entire world and all got $1 from somebody else, well, then we'd all have the same amount of money. So it'd be kind of like this zero-sum game. Although I wonder if it would, break the backs of things like Venmo and PayPal and Cash App if we were to do that and cause them all kinds of trouble. Not that I'm suggesting we do that. But, I found the entire thing really, really interesting. It's one thing, to figure out why do we give or not give when it's an amount that's going to make a difference. Very often I've given people like $100 for a GoFundMe or, $50, $100, $200. And it did make a difference. It did have an impact on my life. I did have to cut some corners or pay a bill late or not get something because that's a substantial amount of money for me, right? But, other times when it's really not consequential. There's been lots of times when I've driven by or walked by the person that, just wants $1 and not given them $1. Why? Is it really going to make a difference in my life? So I thought that was kind of fascinating. I'd like to hear what you think about this. And of course, I would like your money. Have a good one, kids.